POSTCAST. Part of Locked On Sports Atlanta on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into the Hawks Postcast, your home for the best Atlanta Hawks talk. It's quick hitting local insight after every game. You can't get anywhere but right here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra Batiste. Alongside me is NBA and college basketball analyst Deshaun Tate. The Hawks Postcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The star goes down, but an acquisition steps up. We'll talk about how that turned the game tonight. But first, let's talk takes on how the Hawks road trip got on track with a 117-112 win over the Brooklyn Nets tonight. And Tate, you said they can finish.
Yeah, and that's exactly what they did. And to be really honest with you, Tenitra, especially after a 1-3 start, I was like, here we go. I'm not so sure. Are they going to come into this game, read the name on the front of the jerseys? We know that Brooklyn isn't supposed to be all that good this year. Said the same thing and figured as much about Toronto. Said the same thing and figured as much about Chicago. But I feel like the approach with Trae, especially without Trae, is that this team appeared a little peed off, felt maybe a little bit disrespected, maybe by their own performances, not even about the outside noise per se. So I think that I was just really interested to see exactly how this team would come up. But we learned that they are a team that can finish, if not nothing else. It may not be against the best team in the NBA, but it is certainly against another professional basketball team when things aren't going so great. And it's so easy to kind of, kick someone when they're down and capitalize and kind of take advantage. Brooklyn wasn't able to do that on tonight. Atlanta made sure of it. Just got to keep that mentality going forward and into the next game.
Yeah, I really like what you said there, because at first I was a little nervous when you said, oh my goodness, like they're ticked off. I'm like, who's ticked off? But like you said, not ticked off at the Nets per se, but kind of maybe disappointed or frustrated with themselves, because when you think about opportunities that they did have to beat the Chicago Bulls that they didn't take advantage of, that was a disappointing way to start the road trip. So you are kind of disappointed when you know that you can do better, especially because the Bulls, although surprisingly having a good start, nonetheless, it's still a team that, there's been a back and forth for the last 2 or 3 seasons between the Hawks and the Bulls. No matter what the records are, you can kind of throw those out of the door. But I think you make a great point about the way that they close. When you look at the Hawks' performance in the fourth quarter, they tied a season high. Deshaun and I are going to give you guys this disclaimer until we've gotten probably at least a quarter of the way through the season. But they still tied a season quarter high with 5 threes in the quarter, and that's huge. And then the Hawks racked up 12 assists in the fourth quarter. So we talk about the fact that it's important, especially in the absence of Trae Young, who went down in the first quarter with that knee injury, for them to be able to still have 12 assists in the fourth quarter, just to be able to move the ball the way that they were with intentionality. I think that was a good look for them. And I think, too, just kind of looking at some of the high points of what we saw in that fourth quarter as well. You saw that they were able to weather the storm. Yeah, it was late in the game that Kristaps Porzingis fouled out, but he still fouled out. And it was still one of those where you kind of felt the Nets closing in, but they couldn't close out. And I think that's a huge piece there as well. And then when you kind of look at the way that the Hawks closed out, even with Onyeka Okongwu kind of coming in relief, you never know where this game could have gone.
Yeah.
It could have gone to overtime for all we know. And yet Onyeka Okongwu was able to come in relief and be the guy that the Hawks needed him to be, which was, hey, we just need somebody inside to close out, because the Nets did have the edge in points in the paint. So it was important to make sure that Double O didn't foul out, especially if somehow this game got to overtime. You knew at least you had that presence inside. And speaking of the presence inside, the first couple of games, even with the win, offensive rebounds were a challenge at both ends of the court. So for me, my take was offensive rebounds were actually a good look in both directions. And allow me to explain. So when you look at the box score and you see that the Hawks were able to get 13 offensive rebounds, why is that important? Because The Nets only got 15, and I'll tell you what that means in a moment. But that was one of the biggest margins that you and I saw in the stat line to start the season. So for them to close that gap and only have 2 fewer offensive rebounds than the Nets is huge. Another piece there was they took the opportunity to actually capitalize with points, 15 second chance points. That's a big deal because the Hawks, even with their offensive rebounds, you and I noticed that they were missing point blank shots, and they still did that a little bit tonight, but at least they were able to get some points off of the opportunities that were given. Conversely, the Nets had 15 of those second chance points, and yet, Deshaun, 15 of those second chance rebound opportunities, and yet only scored 13 points. To me, that's huge because remember, when we talked about that against the Oklahoma City Thunder, they doubled that. So their offensive rebound number was maybe like 14 offensive boards, 28 points. Chicago, again, outdid them with offensive rebounds and actually put points on the board to the tune of, that's how they ended up with about 1.22 points per possession. So for the Hawks to tighten up in that little area may seem like not a big deal, but when you're talking about a game that you win on the road without your superstar and you still win it by 5 points, to me, that's impressive that you were able to capitalize on your own second chance points, but limit your opponent from capitalizing on theirs.
Very important, Tanisha, because you know exactly how I feel about rebounding, especially offensive rebounding. And it's all the little things for games like this. I don't think that, for especially the last game against Chicago, it came down to really being about the little things. When it comes down to the second chance points, like you said, completely obliterated Brooklyn from a fast break scoring standpoint.
Yeah.
At the half, they were up 12 without, even put 12 points on the board stemming from fast breaks. And Brooklyn didn't even have any.
Yeah.
So it's just all about, controlling the pace of this game. Didn't feel like that this game was being threatened, especially after, Brooklyn got out to the 12-0 run to start the game. I'm like, oh my God, here we go again. But I think that it was more so just a matter of keeping Nicholas Claxton off the boards, or at least trying to, containing him the best way that you possibly can. He did have 12 rebounds, but for a guy who can easily have about 17 of them in a game, I think that that's a good look for the Atlanta Hawks. And then probably one of the more impressive things, not even just from this game, but even the last game, I think they've been doing such a much better job at one of those key 3 things that we were harping on every single episode last year from a turnover standpoint. They've been shooting it also better from 3. So I think that you can see, even though the record might not necessarily reflect, you can see the growth in different areas. When they start ironing out some of those wrinkles and tighten up on a couple of those different loose screws, you're going to be able to have conversations to see exactly how much better that this team is improving, because this somewhat easily could be a team that could only have, 1 loss on its record if they just worked on a couple of those little things early.
Yeah, indeed. And I love what Robert Blackman said. Shout out to him, always joining the postcast early. He says the point of attack defense was good. And yeah, it's not going to be great necessarily this early in the season, but I love the fact that you called that out as something that they improved on, because we've been talking about that also since the season opener and saying, hey, you got to get after it. And I saw multiple players really kind of getting after it at the point of attack. So yeah, I felt like that was another area where the Hawks defense showed some promise. Now, the turning point tonight was another off-season acquisition that's already paying dividends. This episode of our Hawks Postcast is brought to you by Quo. One of the tools that help make a huge difference for business owners is Quo, formerly OpenPhone. It's the same great business phone system you've heard me talk about before, just with a new name. And here's why it matters. Every missed call is money left on the table. When every customer conversation counts, you need a phone system that keeps you connected 24/7. Quo is the #1 business phone system that streamlines customer communications. It works right through an app on your phone or computer, so no more carrying 2 phones or relying on a landline. And Quo, formerly known as OpenPhone, lets your team share 1 number and collaborate on calls and texts like a shared inbox, so no customer gets left hanging. See why over 90,000 businesses trust Quo, formerly OpenPhone. Get started free and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/lockedonnba. That's QUO.com/lockedonnba. And if you've got existing numbers with another service, Quo will port them over at no extra charge. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. This episode of our Hawks Postcast is also brought to you by Rippling. If you're a business owner, here's the truth. SaaS, SaaS, promised to make work easier, but now the average company is buried by hundreds of apps that slow down your teams and simply don't work together. That's not SaaS, SaaS. That's SAD, as in software as a disservice. That's why you need Rippling. Rippling is the uniformed platform for global HR, payroll, IT, and finance, all in one place. They've helped millions of businesses replace a mess of disconnected tools with one system designed to give leaders clarity, speed, and control. So everything from onboarding to payroll to IT access runs automatically and perfectly in sync. And it's seriously simple to use. Gives companies one source of truth for their people, data, and everything they touch. And right now, you can get 6 months free when you go to rippling.com/lockedonnba. Learn more at rippling.com/lockedonnba. That's rippling.com/lockedonnba for 6 months free. This episode of our Locked On Hawks Postcast is also brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. It's their most advanced equipment yet, designed to give you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or cross-training with your favorite instructors. This is training reimagined. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with tools that help you plan, stay motivated, and reach peak performance. You're going to love how the Peloton IQ system offers real-time strength coaching. It actually tracks your reps, suggests the right weights, and corrects your form, making every rep safer and smarter. So let yourself run, lift, flex, and push forward. Explore the new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus today at onepeloton.com. That's onepeloton.com. So this time last season, Deshaun, we were pleasantly surprised by the acquisition of Dyson Daniels and how he was able to make an immediate impact on this Atlanta Hawks team. We saw it again tonight from a recent acquisition, and that was the turning point of the game.
Time to reveal where the game was won or lost. It's the turning point.
Never easy to see your guy go down, and it was such a fluke situation. Literally, Trae Young runs into Moge, comes up gimpy with the knee, and is called for the game. Did not return after exiting in the first quarter with what the Atlanta Hawks said was a right knee sprain. Of course, Trae exits the game after just 7 minutes. He was 2 of 4 for shooting, so already having a good night, a rebound, an assist, 6 points on the night. But ultimately speaking, that meant that Nickeil Alexander-Walker had to come in relief. 7 of 17 from the field in 32 minutes, perfect from the free throw line, 3 boards, 3 assists, couple of steals, 3 blocks, 18 points. Deshaun, I think the Hawks might have hit pay dirt in the offseason again.
Stat stuffer is what it sounds like to me. And I'm looking at all these different things, and when I'm watching him, he just brings so much balance to this team. We always talk about, similar to Dyson Daniels on last year, the surprise that he was. We already figured coming into the season on the defensive end, much like Nickeil Alexander-Walker coming in on the defensive end, being his prowess for what he's known for and what he hangs his hat on, things of that nature, but surprising you a little bit more with his offensive ability to score the ball and put the ball into the basket. Kind of reminds me a little bit of the spark, perhaps maybe off the bench, that I felt like in many cases, kind of like instant offense on what Karis LeVert was in many cases for this team on last year. So being able to replace him, I think was really big for this team. And when you factor in some things from a statistical standpoint, going back to Cam, knowing what type of a scorer he is. The last time he played the Atlanta Hawks, he had 36 points. This time, 19, partially because of the difficulty that Nickeil Alexander's defense, his prowess, had on Cam's inability to be able to score the basketball efficiently. Not only that, Cam also had picked up 4 fouls early by the time we got to the half. One of the reasons why, a couple of those picked up by Nickeil Alexander-Walker. So you can kind of see and pinpoint some of the things that don't even get picked up on a stat sheet. I feel like down the stretch of the game, the Brooklyn team was starting to, I could tell in the face from facial expressions, they just didn't seem like they had structured offense. They were out of rhythm. The continuity was gone. It was almost as if they were out of sync. A lot of that, not all of it, but a lot of that also because of Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And I'll make this one last point before I turn it over to you. We were talking about the things that we learned about this team without Trae Young. Another thing I feel like we learned is probably the best option from a backup point guard standpoint just might be NAW.
Yes. And just to follow up on Trae Young, word coming in the post-game presser that Quinn Snyder confirmed that Trae Young did not suffer an ACL injury tonight. So that's a relief. And of course, they're looking at getting an MRI to determine exactly what the exact injury is, and also to determine the severity. So of course, we are hoping that it's nothing negative, nothing that is going to be long-term for Trae Young, because hey, he still is the heart and soul of and the engine for this team. But like you mentioned, when you're able to look down the bench and say, hey, can we get some good things from Nickeil Alexander-Walker? And the answer is yes, then it makes you more confident. And I think too, if I can just say this as well,
sure.
When we kind of look at the bench overall and kind of look at the acquisitions overall, Dyson Daniels, yes, kind of a slower start on offense than he did last year. But I think overall with what he's been able to do this season, he's still showing that he was one of the better acquisitions last year and showed himself to be that early on in the season. And then you look at Luke Kennard, a nice night from him, because we're talking about turning points and what these acquisitions are able to do or will be able to do for the Hawks. So you look at him, another one who contributed to what this backcourt was able to do. 17 points in just 28 minutes from Luke Kennard tonight, 5 of 8 from the field. But most importantly, Deshaun, 4 of 5 from 3. And that's what really helped the Hawks to have a nice night from the 3-point line as well. They finished approaching 40%. So maybe their nicest night of the season from the perimeter, not just from a percentage standpoint, but the fact that, hey, 33 threes, that's not too bad to me. That means that you took the shot when it came to you. The Hawks weren't trying to force the perimeter game. And I thought they had a nice night there as well, because again, another one of those offseason acquisitions maybe is starting to show why the Hawks went out and got him.
I would say so as well. You know, when you start talking about between those two guys, and I can't think of the guy from last year that was in the starting lineup. Even though I know Karis LeVert was coming off of the bench, but a shooter, but nonetheless, kind of reminds me of him a little bit with Luke Kennard, you know, coming off the bench, being able to, you know, shoot it at a high clip. Again, him nor Nickeil Alexander-Walker are prototypical, natural, born and bred point guards by any means. But if you just need somebody to go in there by default and just protect the basketball, not turn it over, play smart, have some size to go with it, you know, be able to defend. I think they did a good job of getting everybody involved and kind of kept the Hawks. There was no clear or heir apparent, you know, drop off once Trae went out of the game, to be able to still stay right there where they were, keep the lead, keep their foot on the gas, not give it up. We can't say that about a bunch of games that we've had earlier this season. I'm glad that we're able to add a number to the left side of the result column.
Yeah, and how you do that is for everyone who got a chance to play. The Hawks went with a 10-man rotation tonight. Everyone who touched the ball scored the ball. And that's what you have to do. Everyone's going to have to step up, because we don't know just yet how long Trae's going to be out. So, yeah, I think that's important. And I think, were you referencing Georges Niang?
There we go. Thank you much.
That's a perfect. No, that's a perfect example of those 3 acquisitions that the Hawks went after in season that did pay some good dividends for this team last year. So yeah, you hope to see the same this year. But again, turning point for this team was really in the first quarter. Trae Young goes down. How are they going to handle it? Nickeil Alexander-Walker answered the call, but he didn't have to answer the call alone, because the Hawks definitely got good from just about everybody in the 117-112 win over the Brooklyn Nets tonight. And of course, that helps the Hawks to improve to 2-3 on the season. The Hawks Postcast is the #1 place to hang out after every game. Remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And for more on the Hawks, head over to Locked On Hawks with our guy, Brad Rowland. We'll see you next time.